Welcome back to the Tactical Games Podcast. I'm here with James Gill,
Hello, everyone.
and we are sitting in our new training headquarters. We haven't really talked about this yet. It's been a while since our last podcast. GTI in the control room was the last podcast that we did.
In the nuclear facility,
In the nuclear
getting
facility.
itchy and
The facility that gave us all cancer. You're welcome, Lucas. We didn't tell you that at the time, but you've got cancer now. Yeah, we've had a lot happen since then. A lot with the company, a lot with the training center, a lot with just a ton of different things happening. So let's dive into kind of where we've been and the progress that's happened. So we left GTI. Where did we go after GTI? Was it North Carolina? Yeah, we went immediately to North Carolina. That was the next event after that. That was hellacious. North Carolina was like a blistering hellscape.
I lost 14 pounds in that trip. And I was eating.
I just we got to the range and Griffin Group did a great job and was very accommodating and was very helpful. And Z was the name of the guy that helped us out when we were there, and he was awesome. He was very, very good. But the layout of the range was so spread out, it felt like you were always in a different area than everybody else. No matter where you were at, you could never be everywhere, which sucks, but we got through it, right? We ended up putting on a pretty good event out there. We had a couple issues with one of the stages and one of the ROs, but other than that, I think it was a pretty good event. I had fun.
Yeah, and talking with competitors, so we look at the venues ahead of time and we say this would be really fun to do. And then when we get on site, certain things change. The logistics in person change. We know that we're going to experience that in just about every place we go. Maxton was one of those where they had a lot of cool features at face value, but then when we looked into it, it would have been cool for about 30 seconds and it would have been either more trouble than it's worth. So the competitors coming out to each of these venues know that, or should know that, hey, we're giving you the best experience we can. So if you didn't get to play in the plane, well, the plane would have been 5 seconds, right? Of your whole weekend.
And a logistical nightmare. Yeah. One of the biggest complaints that we get is when we move people from place to place. If you include like having to pass over a busy road in that and having a completely separate shooting area than where all the other events are combined, it would have created just a nightmare.
And it's hard enough as is trying to put down a really reliable competition as on a flat bay.
Yeah.
And let alone trying to do the moving parts where, the last two venues we've had 7 to 11 volunteers.
Yeah.
Which is getting, a little better. But sometimes we just don't have personnel to jump around and do things. What I'd like you guys to all do, let's all just parachute into the event.
Right? Yeah.
Like
everybody gets their own parachute.
Hopefully you brought your own because I don't know.
Oh, we got a parachute sponsor. Who's our parachute sponsor?
HEB.
HEB. No, but you're absolutely right. We want to give competitors the best event that we possibly can while making sure that it's going to stay on schedule, that it's safe. Like the tower there was awesome. The long range tower that they had there was killer. But ... it would have shot directly at, like, without a backstop or a berm, directly at where our competitors were. So one errant round, and now we've got a real problem to deal with.
Yeah. That venue in particular has a lot of cool features for some applications. And if we had a week to be on site, we could have hit all those.
Yep.
But in 2 days, it's just not plausible.
And I think that they're like, if you're interested in a match that does utilize that full facility, the Memorial 3-gun, from what I understand, uses every inch of that place. Like, they're crawling all over the place. I think they run 11 or 12 stages, and it's different with a single shooter, with a more controlled environment where you don't have that same thing, and you're all, it's a different format, a different match. It's a 3-gun match. I think that they can use the full facility with that.
So speaking of which, looking at venues that we go to with competitors, and up to this point in the year, we've had, probably half of our competition has been new athletes.
Yeah.
Completely new to the sport, and it plus or minus at each event. But for the most part, we have a big crowd of new athletes coming in, and we're trying to, take note of the podcast, the training videos, all the things that are coming out. We're trying to give resources, and even the seasoned competitors former owner,
Yeah.
everyone included, like, hey, when did this change? Hey, we've talked about it on the podcast. So please stay up to date with us. We're trying to give you guys all the information. But knowing that we have such a large power curve with new things coming in, we're going to have, I don't want to go with growing pains, but we have a process that we have in place that we want you guys to follow.
Yep.
So that you can be successful during the weekend. It's not my score.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm taking pictures of the targets. I know.
We don't do the podcast for self-promotion. We do it to give you guys information so you all understand what's going on, what's coming up, like what's happening in the world of the tactical games. It's something that we care deeply about. We hope you guys all care deeply about. So we put this information out there for you. We do our best to make it entertaining and enjoyable and fun, and I think we do a decent job at it.
There's a couple guys, we just got back from New Mexico shooting Rocky Mountain. A couple of the guys were shooting heavy, shooting 308s and 45s, having to reload every 2 steps. I was like, 3-gun is supposed to be fun. Like, fun is subjective. And that rings true every TAC game event. There are definitely days, especially on the road for us as the crew, where it's not pleasant. But like we overall, like, I don't mind filling sandbags. But then Sunday when someone's like, hey, these sandbags don't weigh the same thing. I'm like,
actually,
I weighed them all.
Yeah, personally. One of our favorite things, and I don't know, maybe this is a piece of insider information we probably shouldn't give out. One of the things when we're having a rough day or when shit's really like hitting the fan, whatever it might be, you guys came up with this, and I think it's absolutely fucking hilarious, is what's your favorite part of the tactical games?
People are slowly catching up. My favorite part of the TAC games is hanging banners.
There's it's funny because it's a job, right? It's a job for all of us. It's something we all have to do. We all get paid to do. But there's also the aspect of, I think we all love it. Like, you would be mad to do this if you didn't have a passion for it, to spend all the time that we do on the road, to go all the places that we do. There's a lot of fucking work. There's a lot of late nights, early mornings. It's, I won't say early mornings. We don't do a ton of early mornings besides on the event weekends.
Trying to avoid it.
Yeah. We try, we do, generally we'll wake up, go work out first thing in the morning, have breakfast,
pancakes,
and then hit the range. We're at the range by like 8. And the funny thing is, we might not start early, but we're there late. We're there till, this last trip, 7, 8 o'clock at night every night.
Yeah, we're pretty long days. And for those of you that don't know our setup, previous events, it used to take us all week to get stuff. Now we have a really nice system coming in place. So you show up Friday for check-in, and there's all sorts of stuff. We're doing range beautification. New Hampshire was a little different, obviously.
Yeah.
They had a course going on. We worked around it pretty. I didn't see all of the impact from that, which I'm not too frustrated with. But, where competitors are like, hey, certain events, you guys didn't number targets. Well, because it rained on us, and we rebuilt the stages last night because they got rained out Thursday. So they don't see all that. And not that anyone's going to listen to an excuse anyway, but you ever watch Monsters, Inc.?
Of course. Yeah.
So the old crotchety match administrator, or that's what I see myself during match weekend. Mike Wazowski, just people come in, they want to arbitrate scores, and I know how I present, but in the end, she turns out to be the hero of the story, right? Hey, I'm keeping things above board for you. So like when you see us match day and you come over, like, you're not inconveniencing us coming to ask us questions. We want to be helpful.
Yep.
When we answer a question and then you say, you said red, I'm going to do yellow. That's where we kind of get lost. Like, hey, I'll write it on your hand for you.
We talked about this. We talked through this. Parking is the one thing that, like, what's your favorite part of the tactical games? Mine's parking.
Oh yeah. Managing if the gates open at 7 a.m., 6 a.m.
We showed up to New Hampshire, which has a very difficult parking situation.
Yep.
That range is honestly pristine. When we showed up, it was beautiful. It was very well kept. They do a great job of keeping that range up. But it's designed for them to have courses there. It's not designed for a giant event.
Like 10 to 20 man courses.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like they facilitate special operations units very well there. You bring 30, 40 people out there that came in 20 cars, they can definitely facilitate that. When you bring out a couple hundred cars, right? Like at our last event, we probably had 400 or 500 cars out there. I think on the low end, I think that's probably fair to assume. We had a total of like 220 competitors. plus spectators,
Yep.
plus everybody else, the volunteers, staff. I mean, the range owners, the range help. I think it would be it's fair to estimate we had 400 cars out there. Um, Parking 400 cars in a cliffside venue can be incredibly difficult. Parking in a Griffin group would have been fine. We had unlimited amounts of space.
Yeah, we have a Walmart parking lot.
Exactly. So, those little things, those little nuances are probably what people don't see. That's the side of the tactical games that I think people don't see. We've been talking a lot about bringing them more of that information and how we could roll that out there.
Yeah, and I don't want to throw it in the competitors' faces, but we've talked about this over the past couple of events. When people complain about the toilet paper being out,
Yeah.
okay, we provided porta potties; they're serviced every night. We're getting to a point where the complaints that we're getting on a regular basis are, I don't like the food selection at the taco truck.
Right.
I don't own the taco truck. I also didn't like the selection. No, but what, like those things, it means that we're doing at least the front side of the work correctly. The event, we're going to have the standard complaints of, hey, the target was too easy or too difficult to weight. I didn't feel the weight stacked up with my personal strength or something of that nature. Yeah, those normal complaints are fine. But the overwhelming majority of the criticisms that we're getting in the after action questionnaires are stuff that people need to understand are out of our control.
Yep. And I think that they're trying to be helpful, right? We've asked them for that. So we're always working to expand our food truck offerings. We're always working to expand our on-site vendor offerings. We're always working to expand those things. And that comes with growth, right? That comes with the sport getting bigger. That comes from when those vendors are there, that you're going out and you're shopping with them. You're putting your money in the people that are supporting the business that support you. So I think as the sport grows, as competitor base grows, we're going to start to see bigger matches, more of a festival-like experience. There's no reason that a gun show should have 4,000 people come through the door, and we don't, right? Like if you're an enthusiast, you like fitness, you like shooting, come out and spend the day with us, especially Nationals this year. Nationals is going to be freaking wild. We're going to have a bunch of stuff the week leading up to it, seminars, opportunities to come check out HQ, opportunities to do just kind of whatever the hell you want to do around here. We're going to have different activations, trainings, things like that. So I think it'll be a good time.
Well, the last few regionals, going back to Rupert, PA, New Hampshire, Maxton, still, we had the DD trailer out there, but seeing more of the vendors on site, the sponsors that are coming out, SIG and Q and a couple of these other companies had tents set up front and center in New Hampshire. Obviously space is limited, but hey, they're giving an option for entertainment, and people are saying, hey, it's not just a bunch of people that are so wrapped up in what they're doing in this moment they can't interact. We see it at other three gun matches or trade shows where you pay for booth space, you come in and nobody comes by your booth because they're off doing something anyway. So that was a nice one to see more. And like Team SIG, obviously they sent a ton of competitors out, which is awesome. 2 events now. It's nice having the interaction there. I'm actually looking forward to Utah being as big an event as it is, and then going into nationals. Those two I'm really excited for. Nationals, obviously, we have a much wider variation of things that we can do at our home venue, obviously.
For sure.
So that's going to be the big, anyone that's not competing, please come out to nationals, tune in, whatever you can do. Like if you're missing nationals, you are really missing out on something special. So,
So, you talked about Team SIG. We also had the former CEO of Staccato, who's now the CEO of, I believe, Prairie Fire and Staccato Ranch. He came out and competed, Nate Horvath, and it's always awesome having competitors who are directly involved with our sponsors come out and give it a run. It's cool to see how they perform, like how it's different than what they might have thought it was. And then they catch the bug, and then now they're like, oh, I get it. I understand why you crazy ass people do the thing. So that's always cool. I'm glad SIG's jumped on board. I'm glad Staccato's got representation coming out. And Nate wasn't the only one. Lindsay was out there, Whitney was out there, not Lindsay. Whitney was out there, and Ben was out there as well. Both from Staccato, from the ranch side. They're great, and they were awesome, and they performed very well. So it was cool to have them competing.
Well, we're starting to field a lot more questions. You see it on the the Facebook page where somebody is interested in what we're doing. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this a year out.
Yeah.
And I always feel bad when I see those people like, just jump in.
Yeah.
Tina was one where she came with me to the first event of the year. She was already signed up for the Texas regional that year. And instead of spectating, I was like, why don't you just jump in and this will answer a ton of questions for you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I'm ready for it. The same story everybody says.
Right.
Do I
And
need to
Tina
be in?
came from a contracting background. She'd carried a firearm for how many years?
Yeah, last 20 years
Yeah,
with a firearm.
From her military service to contracting.
And while she's over in Afghanistan, she's running on a treadmill all day. So like in shape for it. So we have people that come in and obviously they're looking at some of our featured elite athletes.
Yep.
Obviously there's some body profiles in here where we all look at them and we're like, that person's in shape.
Yeah.
And so, you look at me, well, how's he doing it? Well, he's a professional shooter. No, you like go with what your pacing is. So tune up, one of the biggest bits of advice I give to everybody is whatever level of fitness you have, run at that. Whatever level of shooting you have, run at that and be realistic with it. So when you come off a stage and you shot 50%, don't be upset. Like that might be the threat, like above your threshold of what your ability allows for. So having those milestones of, do I absolutely need this gear or this level of training to come do this? Well, you might be training in the dark and then you show up to an event. And you're like, oh, all these shooting courses that I took that taught me how to barrel roll and do all this, I came into a bullseye sport.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe look at our program.
Yeah.
We have the resources.
Yeah. And it was funny. We had a guy that was there volunteering this weekend who he came up to me and he was an older gentleman. He retired from the Marine Corps after 20 years. And he said to me, I'm going to be the 50 plus national champion in 2 years. And I was like, that's awesome, man. Yeah. That's a goal. Like, and he's like, well, how do you guys train for this? And I was like, well, we have our own training program. Pointed him in that direction. And I hope that guy takes it to heart and goes and trains the hell out of it. He's going to have a tough time beating John Murray, but that kind of challenge is great for everybody in that division. I love that. I love people seeing it, getting inspired by it and wanting to do it, because to me, that's why we do it. We do it to give people an avenue to express physical fitness. We do it to increase awareness and support for the Second Amendment. We do it for to give people an outlet that might not have one had it not been for this sport, right? It opens up a lot of doors for people where they meet people that are similar to them, different completely, but also have commonality, right? Like, how many people have you met through this sport that were, maybe not in your unit, but like in your battalion? Like, how many people have you met or just, went to similar duty stations than you did, or just have a common story that you can share it with them? And like, especially when we're getting towards like, GWAT veterans, or just the veteran demographic that we have, the law enforcement demographic that we have, they have somebody that doesn't understand their exact job, like in their department, but understands what it's like to be a law enforcement officer, or what it's like to serve in a community. It was funny. We sat at dinner one night with Zach Rodman and Derek Satterfield. Derek's now a DEA agent, and Zach's obviously law enforcement officer in Kokomo. He's been on the podcast before. And they were talking about drug raids, because Zach had been on the drug task unit at his department, and Satterfield was when he was statey in West Virginia. And they were talking about going into a meth lab and the commonalities of the meth lab between West Virginia.
Oh, the common items.
Yeah, the common items. And we won't go into that, because like, that's definitely not a safe for work podcast. Yeah. But the things that they would find, and it was like, you saw two humans from completely different parts of the world come together and connect on a similarity that they had, even though that experience is like, that's a tough part of life. It's also a part of life that both of these people went through. So I enjoy having involvement in a sport and a community that helps people find a home, helps them find common interests. And, how many lawyers, how many doctors, how many people do we have that aren't in law enforcement, right? But maybe they do something different. They want to push themselves. They want to be different than, I don't want to say want to be different, but they want to push themselves to be better. Yeah.
Well, look at some of our previous events where you have the standard staple of fitness background athletes or fitness specific athletes come in, and they get pushed by somebody who's not necessarily classified as an athlete, but their work. Hey, you're an SF guy or something. And they start seeing, hey, there's tougher dudes on the block than what I'm seeing.
Oh yeah.
Like mentally tough or,
Yeah. Mentally, physically. I mean, there's toughness out there for sure.
and so it's nice to have the blending of each of these backgrounds pushing each other and saying like, oh, well, you're good in this one discipline. You haven't seen it from this perspective. And let me give you a little insight to that. So the crossovers are blending actually pretty nice in this sport. I know a lot of athletes have come in, and ego is one that you show up with your ego. That's fine. We'll rid you of that the event will rid your ego real fast. Yeah. You get no repped on a bag one time, like I didn't call it. The bar did, and then you have the people where they have a moment where they're like, okay, I could quit, and then they turn and look to the left and the right, and you'll have, let's say, Dr. Bob on the line with them.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, as far as I know, Bob's never been through war. He's not a cop. He's, and so you look over and Dr. Bob's in your squad and he's still going through the heat and the heavy reps.
Yep.
Like, okay, well, if this guy can do this and he works indoors all day, like, and my job is to be outside, tough guy, like I should be able to do this. And then having the attitudes of guys coming off, Martin, Kyle Martin, some of these guys, like you meet them and they're big, super aggressive humans. And then you talk to them and they're just like the nicest dudes ever.
Yeah. Zach's like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
well, Zach is a little different. He's kind of got to steal your snacks and whatnot.
Yeah. I think, and this isn't I didn't come up with this, but competition breeds excellence, right? Like, regardless of what you do for work, if you're competing against other people, it's going to make you better.
That was the motto there on our team for a while there in Quantico.
Yeah.
Every time my former boss would say it, we'd be like, motto.
So look at the most exciting dude I think that we have in the sport right now is Kurt Finnell.
He's turned the tide on a bunch of people. Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, you know the discussions that happen with that, and like just everyone coming in and being like, "Oh, I got gut checked by another really hard bastard in the sport."
I'm very excited to see national championship this year on the men's and the female side. There's going to be a great competition in the top 5 for both men and women in the elite division. I'm very excited to watch this year.
Yep. The team event was pretty eye-opening for a few people, where those competitors that hadn't been on a team before got to come in and see the dynamics, how it changed, and like you might be really good at something and you got carried through this stage because of your partner.
Yep.
And if you were standalone on this score, the layout would have been completely different. So you get some, you lose some. People come to me with scoring issues all the time. Sometimes we can give you the hits. Sometimes you're not going to get them.
Yep.
Sometimes it rains on you, kind of thing. But the athletes going first time on a team level and starting to figure out that they have to approach a stage differently. It's not just grunting through the event. Like, there's some thought process that needs to be put into the stage. I have to think about this ahead of time. Actively while I'm on the stage, we might have to make some adjustments. People are starting to pick up on, there's a significant amount of gaming going on in the sport that I wasn't aware of before. And so now that we've had all of our regionals, or the majority of our regionals, all of the athletes that went and duked it out at a regional, got their qualifying slot, they're all seasoned athletes at this point going to nationals. I've had to remind a few people, like, if you go back-to-back events, you might be recovered, but only to 80%.
Sure.
And then you got gut checked by somebody who was 100%. It's their first match of the year, and it's kind of concerning to you or whatever. But, hey, you got to be realistic where, hey, you just did 3 events in a row. You weren't necessarily recovered. You didn't put all your energy into this one. Nationals is going to be different. Like, everybody's going to be tuned up for national.
Yep.
Obviously there's going to be some injuries or whatever. Oh, I competed a month ago.
Yeah.
But everyone coming to that event is going to know what's going on. The information for the stages is there. People are starting to track the information that we put out ahead of time, what they're looking for. So the game day experience for those athletes, they're going to know, like, this is for all the beans right here. There's going to be no shady things. I can't blame the weather. I can't blame this, or like, oh, this guy only beat me because I was new and I didn't know what was going on. As a first-time athlete, you come in and we see it on the after action. I wasn't really sure what to do. Well, that's why I told you to like come ask me. I'll hold your hand and walk you through the entire stage brief
Yep.
and ask the guys next to you, even though they're your competition, they will tell you.
Yep.
Um, so all that stuff will be gone at nationals. And so being that all of the experienced athletes will be judging other experienced athletes, there's not gonna be any questions about, oh, the standard got adjusted. And, all of your excuses are going to be invalid at nationals. So unless your rifle breaks, which if it does, it's still doesn't count.
So we skipped over Iowa. We didn't talk about Iowa in there, but I love that venue. Every year when we go there,
Yeah.
it's always it's compact, which makes the event feel so much bigger. Now, what I will say is that range, like there's specific things about that range that lend to us doing specific things at that range. So one of the comments that I saw was, the stages were pretty similar to last year. And that's true. There was definitely some common themes that we used going from last year to this year. Maybe two of the stages were pretty close to what we did last year. But the rest of it, I mean, even the run was a completely different run path. Like they had cut and carved a whole new run path on the opposite side of the range than where
Yeah.
we had run the year before. That venue is awesome. The Brownells family's always been very good to us. Aaron, that runs the range over there, is an absolute all-star. That event's always fun. I'm excited. We are going to go back there next year. We're going to do a team event there next year, which I think is going to be a really killer team event. Probably around the same time of year as this past one that we just had. But yeah, Iowa was a great one. So we went from North Carolina back to Texas, Texas to Iowa. Iowa, we drove to New Hampshire. And the New Hampshire event we touched on a little bit. That was our team event. And then we drove back from New Hampshire and we're back in Texas. And in all of that, we opened our headquarters. So the headquarters, you guys are seeing the podcast studio that we're in now. This is our podcast studio. So this allows us to bring you guys content more easily and more quickly. We can kind of sit down, put it together. We don't need to set up my garage to bring all the guns out of the safe, put everything up on the walls, and then set the tables, move all the merch out of the way. And that was a big part of this headquarters, was making sure that, one, we have a training facility so we can offer the courses that we want to put on, the training seminars that we want to put on, really a home for tactical games training. We have our retail space here, which has been really awesome to have our products be able to be displayed and have people come in off the streets and kind of see what we're doing here. The podcast studio, the offices, the trailer space, the storage areas. It's great having everybody working under the same roof. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, but we finally found the right building and we're in the right place as a company to be able to do it.
We had everything blossom all at once. I mean, the expansion of the skirmish program.
Yep.
Got the affiliates on board.
Yep.
I think that's still growing, obviously. I mean, it's been pretty significant, and it speaks volumes about what's to come.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
So Utah, for those of you coming to Utah, obviously it's going to be our first time doing all 7 or 8 stages all weekend.
Yep.
And I think as people start getting used to that, I really think they'll like that.
The schedule, honestly, it sounds ludicrous, but like adding more people allowed us to reduce the schedule, like so from the start and finish time. So the 100, and we've talked about this in the podcast before, but the 140 person schedule, which is what we'll be on, runs incredibly well. It's so much. We can start the day at 8 o'clock. We can be done with the day by 5 o'clock.
Yep.
It's really just it's awesome. I'm glad that we're moving to that. I'm excited to see how big some of the divisions are. I think the tactical men's division has like 65 people in it. 40 plus was around 40 or 50. 50 plus is around the same. I think the elite field is like 35 for men's and like 10 for women's. There are 52 female competitors in that event. So we've got like 300 with the teams. I think it's like 320 people competing that weekend. And all of the divisions are big. I think the 40 plus division has like 12 women competing in it. So it's cool that we're going to have such a massive event. South Carolina is going to be the same. So having that big of an event and then capping it off with nationals here.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough too when you have, let's say last year, Raton was a late addition on the schedule.
Yep.
So smaller event.
Yep.
People go and, I've talked to other athletes where they're not sure of where they stack up in the division. Hey, I podiumed in this division 3 times in a row. Should I move up? And you have to ask them, well, who was there?
Yeah.
You know,
How many people were competing that weekend?
yeah, at a
Yeah.
300 plus entry event, like if you're on the podium, you are doing something solid.
Yeah. You did pretty good. Yeah.
You can have a few of your seasoned athletes that make a mistake or something like that at a normal event, but you're not going to have any wiggle room when you have, like, think Masters. You have 25 seasoned athletes in an event instead of 4.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Our masters field, especially in the 50 plus division, is always competitive because so many of those guys are repeat, like, I don't call them repeat offenders, but like repeat customers where they're coming out regularly, right? They're repeat competitors. They go out and a lot of those guys will compete in 2, 3, 5, 10 matches a year. Um, and they get way better doing that. It's
oh yeah,
cool to see it. And they're not like the weights in the 50 plus division are approachable enough where you're not going to get the shit kicked out of you over a weekend and it's going to affect your training for a month afterwards, right? Take a couple days of rest, get back after it. You can definitely start competing at a high level again. So um, it's always cool to see the Masters division, how they perform out there.
oh yeah. Um, do we know the breakdown of the number of slots for nationals? I mean, as people are starting to figure out
Ooh.
the roll down to that.
Yeah. I think there are, I want to say there's like 80 slots left. Um, I don't know the total numbers. I'd have to do that. I haven't looked at that yet.
Obviously, some of the divisions will be larger, but you're looking at, I think the last I looked, it was like 40 minimum per division based on who qualified.
Yeah. Ideally, you'll have, and like, okay, so our competitor base for women's 40 plus is smaller, right? So you'll probably only see, hopefully, 15 to 20 women in that division. I think last year we had 12, hoping to increase that number 15 to 20. For the women's elite field, same thing. We'll probably see in that 15 to 20 range. Now, the women's tactical field, we've had a huge breadth of competitors this
Yep.
year. So you could very easily see that being in the 40 to 50 range because there's been so many women that have competed and qualified. And that'll be cool. That's where you get a really true test of like who these people are, what they're capable of when you increase the size of the field. I know there's been some gripes about the roll down. Increasing the field allows for more specialists to come in, it allows for people that are good at certain things to come in, and they kind of upset the leaderboard and it creates variances in it. So that means that you have to train harder in those specific things to be able to be competitive, which is pretty cool.
Well, if you and I are competing and it's just you and I in the division, we're going to know what you're good at immediately.
Yep.
So on the run, I'm
Shooting,
going to say,
beat you in shooting.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
So on the run, you'll say, hey, take it easy on me, keep it at 10-minute miles, whatever. And so to avoid having somebody come in and just walk through a stage, I mean, I walk through stages, but somebody to take a relaxed approach to a stage because they're so far ahead. Oh, I'm winning this event or whatever. They won't be able to take it easy because each stage you can have somebody who, hey, this athlete is not necessarily your heavy bag lifter, but they can run.
Yep.
So they're gonna really gap you on points on the run. So you better put the energy in the run.
For sure.
I think this year the new addition that everybody's talking about is the swim, right?
Yep.
So like another aspect to it. Do you want to go into that or?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah. So, the timing's probably not great because obviously what just happened with CrossFit, but those guys that don't know, CrossFit had the CrossFit Games here in Fort Worth, and they lost a competitor. Was our Dukic, I think is his last name. I watched a ton of different stuff on him. Sorry if I mispronounced his last name. But a games competitor, has been in the sport for a long time. He drowned and perished, unfortunately. There's a lot of criticisms about CrossFit, about the competition, about how they continued on, and blah blah blah. We're not going to get into any of that because it's none of my fucking business whatsoever. What happened there that was good for us is it created it created in me an awareness of what we needed to do in order to ensure that our event is safe, that we have off ramps for people, sequencing. Have I run and swim and run again before? Yeah, I've done run, swim runs in competitions. I've done swim runs in competitions. I never paid a ton of attention to the safety protocols that were put in place. So because of this and because of the tragedy that just happened, we're going to reach out to our community and ask for support in like, how do we make this as safe as possible? I always had the plan of having an off ramp for people. So those people that can't swim, like you're going to be in knee deep to waist deep water, and you're going to dredge through the water. And the person that's swimming next to you is going to perform faster. You're going to still have to deal with going through the water. You're still going to have to deal with the change if you want to put different shoes on, or if you want to change your outfit or whatever you want to do. But you are going to be in the water. Like it's going to be part of the competition. We don't stop doing things because somebody else failed at it.
Yep.
Yeah, like it would be asinine for us in a sport that includes firearms to not do something because somebody else failed at it.
Absolutely.
Instead, what we have to do is make sure that when we do it as safely as possible, respecting the people that are our competitors, because just like anything else, we put safety measures in place. Like, why don't we sling rifles anymore all the time? Why don't we run with hot guns? Why don't we do any of the shit that we don't do? It's because we want to make sure our competitors go home at the end of the day. And not to say that any other sport doesn't, because I think everybody goes into it with that intention. There's definitely been times where we could have put more emphasis on safety on runs specifically. We always do our best to make sure that we have a cart out there that's patrolling the runs. We don't oftentimes put water out on the runs, which is something that we probably look at. High ends of heat and the gear that we utilize in those runs is something that is a lesson learned from this year, because we did have we had heat casualties, or heat injuries. I won't say heat casualties, but heat injuries. And that's something that we need to get better at, and we will improve, because we want to make sure that our competitors are safe. Our competitors deal with enough shit on their daily basis, right? Like, fuck, driving to work every day can be dangerous. Like, if it's, especially with how many people are on their goddamn cell phones every day. So whatever we can do to improve competitor safety, I think, is an important thing.
Well, I think as long as I've been involved with the sport, there's stuff that I've been aware of, mainly because I ran ranges for the Marine Corps. So I understand the logistics of that, having a corpsman, checking out your ranges 30 days prior, ammo deliveries, all that stuff. But, over the last couple of years, we're not without incident, obviously, from injuries or things happening. And, every event we come home from, and the control that we have with firearm safety on the line, off the line, chamber flags, that's a recent thing for us, is going chamber flags. And before it was, oh, well, we're tactical, big boy rules.
Yep.
And the guys that were pounding their chest about big boy rules were the ones that we have pictures of them pointing rifles at us. It's like, okay, so, even when you're big boy status, you make mistakes. So let's put these controls in place. And the people that gripe about it, oh, well, you're making me do this really arbitrary thing, but they don't know the why.
Yeah.
Hey, we're doing this. You might be proficient with it, but everybody else isn't. So scheduling with certain things, what time of day you're running, loadouts that you're carrying. In previous events, you had to run with all your kit because you shot before. Now we have the freedom to adjust that a little bit.
Yep.
So for those of you guys looking at any of these events going forward, I've been pretty open with you. If you see something you don't like that I'm doing, please tell me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But AEDs, like, that's, a relatively recent thing for the events, within the last couple of years anyway. But, we got to go through and spot check AEDs. Those aren't cheap. We've got med bags. So don't ask me for Band-Aids, because that's a blowout bag. Like, do you want Neosporin, or do you want your heart to function? The med bag is for this. Go to the merch tent. Amanda has Little Mermaid Band-Aids for you. So all those things, like, it's funny to have athletes from this year that when we announce something, they just throw their hands up and they're like, oh, the sky is falling. We're going to do this really crazy thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you ever climbed an alpine ladder? Because at previous events, it was just like, you're going up over this and you look at this jankety rope and you're like, are you sure, Tim? And he's like, yep. We're going over it. Like, so the control measures we have
fallen down tubes at GTI climbing a caving ladder,
or climb down the wrong tube. Go into GTI and put your hand on any of the corrugated tin inside those buildings. They're not bolted onto anything. So yeah, the controls that we have in place are pretty significant. Like, now we have, we're not changing tires in traffic anymore.
Right.
Like, I mean, we've made lots of progress here. Obviously there's going to be some growing pains. Again, I hate saying that, but if you think you're worried about your score, or that you're worried about safety, we're worried about it probably tenfold.
Yep.
If you fail, it means I failed.
Right.
So,
and we are not without incident, as you said. Like, whether it's scoring incident or safety incident or whatever might happen. But I think that we definitely all put an emphasis on making sure that all of the events are as fun, as safe, and as on schedule as possible.
Yep.
Like that's if we're going into an event, that's what we're looking at. It needs to be cool, it needs to look cool, it needs to be safe, and it needs to feel safe.
Yep.
And if those things are, if you hit all those things, and the biggest gripe people have is like, well, I have to do this specific safety thing that I don't agree with. Like, okay, find another sport. I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell
Go,
you.
go to your home range and do what you want there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And like, it was funny because the rifle boxes, right? I remember Jared and I having this conversation, and he was, I won't say adamant about it, but he was definitely like, hey, this needs to happen. What do you think? And I kind of hemmed and hawed about it. I was like, well, one of the worst parts of the sport is getting hit in the back of the head with the rifle when you go to bend down and pick something up. And we went back and forth, and ultimately, like, that decision was the right decision. He made
yeah.
a very good call on that, and I'm glad that we went in that direction. But I was opposed to it even like because I didn't look at the bigger picture. I just looked at, well, I've been hit in the back of the head a bunch of times by my rifle when I went to pick things up. Everybody should have to deal with it.
That's a training score. Right? Obviously,
Yeah.
Coast Guard, right? I was in the Marines. So at one point, I had to do this. I
Yeah.
had to walk uphill in the snow to get to school.
Yep.
So now everybody else has to do this. Now
Right.
we've kind of streamlined these things. You don't have to suffer the same as we did. Same thing with the training piece.
Sure.
Hey, when I started shooting, there was no internet.
Yep.
It was you go train, you take a class from somebody, word of mouth on certain things, and
You get a VHS tape from a friend somewhere.
yeah, I got this book that it took me 4 years to get in the circle of people that tell me what the book is. Now you just go on YouTube and there's 2,000 people giving you the wrong information, but it's just much easier to get that. So we're streamlining those things, and I wish I had videos from when I started the sport.
Yeah.
Just seeing how things were set up and coming from other shooting sports and seeing that, hey, I know I can get the benefit of the doubt on certain things because they see my ability, but other people aren't getting that just because they look new or whatever else. Hey, there were no tents on a stage, and I didn't even think about it. We just stand in the sun all day.
Yeah.
That's what we're on the range. Okay, we do it.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, it'd be really nice if we had a circus tent, fans, and
Mobile air
massage table.
conditioners.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it would be nice.
Can you guys put gluten-free sausage patties out
Yeah.
on them?
I wish people's dogs would stop eating my lunch.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, okay, this might be a full service sport, might be, but we don't bring you lunch at tune-up. Okay, so if there's a sandwich at tune-up, it's for the instructor.
I can't believe. So let's talk about this. So tune-up in New Hampshire that we just went through. I came and I brought you a sandwich and chips.
And said, hey, Gil, here's your lunch. In front
Mind
of all
you,
the students.
Let's guilt everybody into this. Let's guilt everybody so they understand. You are out there all damn day in the sun, very little cover, and when everybody else is under the shade, you're still out instructing, right?
Yep.
So where everybody else gets that couple minute reprieve, where they're underneath the tents, hanging out, drinking their water, you're out there doing your thing. And on that one break that you had during the day, which is 15 minutes or whatever it might be, you went back to eat your sandwich, and it was gone.
So Kevin Dyson was sitting there, and he even reminded me, he's like, hey, Gil, make sure you eat. I appreciate you. Thank you, Kevin. And I went back there, the case of water's there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, like stuff got adjusted. Well, then at the end of the day, as we're cleaning up, there's a couple empty water bottles there. The cases of water still there. No sandwich trash, nothing. It was just, and I'm not upset that I didn't get to eat. I'm just flabbergasted that like someone's like, oh, this must be my sandwich. A little bit of karma, to be honest, because I constantly laugh when Amanda doesn't have her sandwich. It's usually Nick or Colin that are complaining about food. And
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, guys, you have to stop for your third sandwich break of the day.
That's why we're there till 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Sandwich breaks.
You know how many times you got to wash your hands before you can spread mayonnaise on your bread? Your 23 nut bread.
Oh, perfect. All right, you got anything else you want to add?
No. So we're obviously pay attention to our training videos. This stuff is no longer polite suggestions. It's now a requirement. As far as coming to an event, it's getting harder and harder to give you the excuse of what you failed coming to the event. If you're brand new and you didn't know that you needed 5 magazines, hey, we can loan you some magazines. If you do something that is unsafe or that's outside of the rules and you get penalized for it, don't come complain to me. You've had all the resources. I will personally teach you how to use practice score. But that's it.
Yeah. So what Gil meant to say was he really likes to disqualify people. So give him the chance. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys very much. Glad to have you back, and look forward to seeing you again soon.